Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Humans Use What? Written by Steel Blue 8. You use what kind of engines? Cries the second disaster response commissioner in a shocked and deeply confused tone. The haphazardly dressed human at one end of the table nods in response to the shot. I'm not joking. We found them cheaper and more reliable. They simply have less parts. About 5 hours earlier. Disaster response call. Commissioner Kurska was not having a good time of things. At 4:24 a.m., the Terran freight spacecraft, Crosco, number C2276-HL, had entered an orbit around Ares' second smallest moon on a routine refuel stop. Engines flared with the characteristic orange-white of human sublight engines. When the entire ship went up, a violent blast shredded the blocky freight vessel into orbital debris that was now raining down on the barren muck below. Almost immediately, the finely tuned machinery of the Disaster Response Corps sprung into action, and the Vulpine Commissioner had been dragged out of his comfortable sleep and straight into the offices. Within an hour, an investigation team assembled and underway with Kurska as the leader. The secretary finishes explaining the start to finish of what they know so far, and the commissioner chewing on the stick of plant-based stimulant similar to the usage of coffee, a common habit, as demonstrated by the teal tint of her teeth, before staring blankly at her neatly filed report in front of her, and stating in a monotone foreign voice, "That's impossible." Before the unfortunate secretary, even less pleased to be here than she is, can answer, she continues. You tell me the first response team thinks the explosion started in the engines and moved up to the ship. That is impossible. A rocket engine can't do that. They can overheat. They can melt the exhaust cone. They can shatter and will melt the reactor plates. They can corrode themselves to dust or gimbal right out of their mountings and a million other faults. But unless you're in an atmosphere with oxygen, a rocket engine will not explode. She's right, of course. Such things is entirely unheard of. Since the JDSP human spirit arrived in Erisk space and heralded the modern age, there has only been one single rocket explosion, one in the upper atmosphere of their homeworld, and the direct result of an attack by godforsaken idiots. So, sabotage. The debate rages on. All the while, more information steadily arrives. The absurdity, streamlined bureaucracy of the Arisk putting any Terran disaster response to shame. The cleanup operation complete just 4 hours after the incident. Half the parts are catalogued and laid out for investigation, and already, sabotage ruled out. There's no motive, no bomb. The ship was hauling mostly empty containers with the same crew that have staffed it for the past 6 years. Finally, on a full stomach and empty platter in the middle of the table, Kurska's mind had moved to other matters. What about the secondary fuel tank? Prompted nods of agreement from 5 other response team commissioners around the table. True, it has an entirely different geometry. And reinforcements, they can handle much denser gases than the primary. Do we have access to the schematics for the class? Not within 5 days. Humans administrators move slower than native flower species, known to move towards brighter areas. Babel rising again as theories of half-baked ideas fly around the table, centered on that mysterious extra fuel tank, seen in not a single Erisk ship design. The secretary sharply cutting in and silencing things for a moment with a statement of, "Can't we just ask the exchange mechanic?" An awkward pause as all eyes turn towards them. The exchange mechanic is the nearest available human. Everyone in the room knows that, sent by the Cultural Integration Program, that one of their nations is running, bringing human engineering principles to Arisk problems. The secretary sheepishly continues, all of our ships use a set of basic parts. That are the same purpose between models. If the same holds true for human, Terran craft, we don't need schematics, we just ask one. A human, I mean. Once the furless, flimsy-looking mechanic had been summoned to the team office, it takes him mere moments to glance at the photos of the destroyed secondary fuel tanks and give them an answer. It says right here, there on the warning sign, that's an oxidizer tank. It takes a bit more probing from the officials and the incredulous shout of, "You use what kind of engines?" before they can decipher what the tired human means. Chemical-fired rocket engines. Humans in the modern age use chemical-fired rocket engines, Kurska states in a tired tone of voice. Of course they do. Sure, traveling to the stars on a god-forsaken bomb, despite the alternatives they invented themselves, are very, human. Ultimately, the disaster was filed away with only a brief investigation needed, a result of an overworked maintenance staff by human corporations, and for the Arisk, the only policy change, a human engineer joining the permanent roster of the Disaster Response Corps, on call to consult on matters of the absurd engineering practices of the Terran populace. Translator's note: while the term translates most easily as God-forsaken, it is analogous with barbarous or uncivilized or anti-science, and most literally translates as outside the domain of advancement. Advancement being both the term used in English and the name of one of their deities. End of story. Story number 2. Prove Me Wrong, written by I Am the Hype, TFS. The human ambassador slowly stood to his feet, all eyes of the Galactic Union representatives turning their gaze upon him. All the media drones from the various news outlets focused on his face. There were bags under his eyes, and he kept a hand on the table in front of him, as if worried that he might not be able to stand firmly with the support. This gathering had not been scheduled, and the members only assembled at the behest of the human. The request was simple and polite. It merely asked for a short time to address the representatives, and assured the recipients that the matter was not dire, and if they could not attend, there would be no issue. But they had all come. They had all come because they had been reminded time and time again that if you ignored humanity's whispered words, you would not be able to block out its roar. I apologize. I am not quite as eloquent as I usually am, but the last few days have brought sleepless nights in their wake. As much as I'm here as a representative for my species, I must confess that my next words come from me as an individual, though I sincerely hope that they resonate with the collective consciousness of my people. He took a deep breath and released an even deeper sigh before continuing, as if what he had to say was physically straining and the weight pressing him down would only be lifted when he said what he needed to. I am afraid not of conflict, not of destruction. These concepts have been with my kind since the beginning, and they will continue to be our faithful companions until we cease to be. I am afraid not of tyrants, not of atrocities. We have seen and rooted out despots and sought to protect an afflicted with all we have, no matter who is suffering, as many of my colleagues could attest, but will refuse to do so out of self-interest. His eyes sweep across the room as he pauses, noticeably stopping on the ambassadors of several warmongering species who keep their place in the Union through legal loopholes and technicalities. Many of them winced at his words, having felt humanity's wrath in the past, not eager to feel that sting again, but also unwilling to voice their anger and humiliation lest they be further condemned for actions that prompted such a painful response to begin with. Others, who had yet to test the limits of humanity's patience, or personally experienced the breadth of their vengeance, simply glared back at him in silent defiance. I am afraid of being right. I am afraid of every time another report crosses my desk that suggests the suffering of others because I desperately want to be wrong. I'm afraid because every time I am right, a rage burns so deeply within me that I can scarcely believe that I am the same person when justice is dispensed and the rage is cooled. Something stirs within the collective heart of humanity when we see wrongs being committed, be it amongst ourselves or by those around us. It is something that runs deeper than our genes, and I suspect goes even beyond the bonds of our very souls. It is a primal urge, an eternal discontent at even the notion of injustice. It has driven us since the beginning, and with the reason we stand proudly amongst your civilization today. But it hurts. God, it hurts. During these past few sleepless nights, I've even toyed with the idea that maybe the only reason we fight injustice is to selfishly soothe our own pain. It horrifies me to consider that maybe in the earlier stages of my species' existence, we could ignore the ache and turn a blind eye to the wrongs around us. That the only reason we finally stopped to help our fellow man or beast was because we let the pain grow until it became unbearable. And that is why I have asked you all here today to make a plea, to beg of you that the next time a report crosses my desk, the next time I feel that deep rage stir at the thought of injustice. He let his back bend as his other hand joined the other to support the weight of his upper body as he leaned heavily upon them as he trailed off mid-sentence. His head bowed as if the weight he felt before he spoke had somehow gotten even heavier. He was silent for a moment that seemed to stretch on for minutes, when in reality perhaps 30 seconds had passed. When he finally lifted his head, the Union Hall, the most secure room in the known universe, was flooded with such a concentrated hostility from a single human that fear responses ran rampant. The ambassador of the various prey species huddled together and desperately tried to force down the urge to bolt for the doors. The predators bared their fangs, flared their frills, and raised their hackles as they felt the instinct to defend themselves flood their minds. What stood before them didn't feel like a human. It felt old, as if a predator from the dawn of time itself had inhabited the body of a man before them, staring out at them from an ancient past. Nothing had physically changed about the human ambassador. His hands weren't balled into tight fists. His lips didn't curl into a snarl. Nothing about him displayed any intent of a threat. Nothing, except his eyes. The beast that stirred within humanity's heart stared out through those eyes. The beast whose hunger knew no end. The beast who knew no mercy for those it turned its fangs against. The beast stared out at the media drones and the ambassadors and spoke with a human voice. Prove me wrong. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.